Okay, so we can call the meeting to order of the Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee of the 5th of August in 2021. And just by way of a very brief announcement, we do have a quorum because the council took action last night to do two things. One of them was to lower the full number of members that could be on ResJ from the original 13 down to 9. And that means that a quorum is now 5 of us, 5 people, including Chance and myself. So that means we do have a quorum. And the other thing that was done last night, just to complete that, is to extend the terms of the people who are on ResJ, which were they were actually a year, and so they would have expired in September, beginning of September. So the terms were extended to December, and so giving a chance to get maybe some recommendations done. That was the hope, and decisions could be made at that point based on discussions I'm sure that ResJ might have as to what people would like to do at that point. But anyway, we've got a chance to go at this point. And so I guess because after Alexandra left, I'm left as the chair because we were co-chairs. So we could put it on an agenda if you would like. We can discuss that at the end of the meeting to consider another co-chair or whatever. But for now, I'll be chairing the meeting and I'll try not to talk too much. So if we can do a roll call, Ann.
Yes. Mayor Ackerman.
Yes, here.
Councilmember Cutrano.
Here.
Lisa.
Yes.
Serena.
Here.
Sophia. Tayu.
Here.
Veronica.
Here.
All right. So, I'll read the land acknowledgement, except it's not printed on the agenda. So if anybody has it handy, you could read it, or I'll read.
I have it handy, Bruce.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Mayor Ackerman.
That's fine. Please.
Okay.
I'll call you Chance, huh?
Okay, perfect. So the Fairfax Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee acknowledges that we are located on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok people of present-day Marin County. We honor with gratitude the land itself and all of its ancestors, past, present, and emerging.
Thank you. So we have on the agenda to review the norms. You probably have them up, and I'll just ask maybe for a show of hands of the committee whether we want to do that. We have a pretty full agenda, and I understand people wanted to get to some discussion tonight. So do you want Ann to put them up? And yeah, okay. So these are our norms with respect to being in the meeting. So if anybody has any thoughts about them, or we can just think to ourselves about how they fit with us. Okay. And assigning meeting roles. We have often had a timekeeper. So we might want to do that tonight, although we don't have too many times on the agenda, but it will be full. And a process observer to consider those norms as we go through the meeting. Do we have any volunteers for that? for either of those?
I'll go ahead and be the person that observes the norms.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm happy to keep time.
My only concern with the time is there are no set minutes on the agenda, just
Yeah,
so that it'll be hard to figure that one out.
yeah, maybe just a reminder when we are, as you see fit. Okay, sorry about that on the agenda, but. Okay, so the first item on tonight's agenda will be to discuss and consider the housing element presentation that Planning Director Benberto and Andy, and I believe there was another person from EMC, but you all gave a presentation at our last meeting, which we weren't able to have because we didn't have a quorum, but that was recorded. So hopefully people either watched that at the time or have watched it since. And so if we, I believe we should take public comment before each item. So that just tees up the item, and Andy Flower is with us tonight to talk about that. So do we have anyone who would like to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. And Andy, would you want to just?
There's a hand up, Bruce.
Mark Bell.
Okay,
Okay, so Mark, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
My comment is if there's a presentation, then the person should make the presentation and then there should be public comment. How can someone make public comment if they haven't seen the presentation? That seems logical to me.
well, the presentation was actually given last month's meeting on the Zoom call at which the meeting.
So Andy Flower is not giving a presentation this evening?
Not this evening, no.
So how can one comment if you're going to make comments? How do you expect the public to make comments regarding your personal observation?
It's not personal, it was public on the Zoom call.
No, I'm saying if Andy Flower, I have 3 minutes. If Andy Flower is there to answer questions.
Just a reminder to not.
If Andy Flower is there to answer questions, then we should be able to hear what questions you ask him, and there may be something that we would like further clarification on. That's like, let's have a meeting. Okay, let's do all the public comment on all the items first, and then we'll get to the items later. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't understand what's so hard for you to comprehend about that.
Well, I'm not actually gonna go any further with you on that because you've given your comment.
Okay, well, I'll continue my comment, and my comment is that you continually try to subvert the Brown Act, and you don't want to hear from the public, and yet you say that you do. So that's the end of my comment.
Okay,
Okay, Mark.
thank you.
You see any other?
I do not have any other hands. I do not see any other hands.
Okay, so we're bringing it back to the meeting, and Chance.
Yeah, I think Veronica also has her hand up, and hers was up first, so she can go first, and then I'll go.
Sorry.
Thanks, Chance. I just wanted to remind us to not be engaging in conversation with the public commenters, as hard as it can be.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, as we move forward.
Okay, so Chance.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge for members of the public that both of the presentations that are listed on the agenda were given at a prior attempted meeting. It was more of just a public presentation that ended up being given, not a presentation specifically for the ResJ, since there was no quorum and the ResJ did not officially meet. But I think the intention, and you can correct me, Chair, was that this would be a discussion after those public presentations. And so that's why there's no presentation tonight, correct?
Yeah, correct. And it's on the agenda what meeting that was. Ann?
Yeah, I just want to make clarification too. The presentation happened on July 1st at a meeting that did not take place, but a presentation did take place. The presentations can be found on the website under our ResJ meeting, and you can view the presentation there at any time, and you could have viewed it prior to this meeting.
Thanks. Okay, so Andy, would you like to just kick it off by telling people what you would like to hear and what you're looking for in terms of feedback from this committee?
Mr. Chair, I believe you missed Liesel's hand was also up. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I actually took my hand down because I think that I listened to what Andy has to say, and then if I have questions or comments, I'll go ahead and do that. Thank you, Chance.
Okay, and if we can just use regular hands, it's hard for me to simultaneously be looking on the screen that the virtual hands are and screens the regular hands are. I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you tonight with the ResJ, and I thoroughly enjoyed presenting. It was a little difficult to present to an empty room, but I hope that you found it insightful, or at least hopefully it raised your curiosity, and that maybe I can help elaborate for any points that you may want more information about. And I do have that presentation queued up, so if there's a certain point that might benefit from going back to a certain slide, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're here to listen and to, I would say one thing that we would really appreciate feedback on is how we can be more fully engaged with the whole of the community. We've got some exciting activities in line. On Saturday, Ben and I are going to the food pantry. We're going to be bringing the survey that's available online to make sure that folks there can be active participants. We have gift certificates that are enabling an opportunity for compensation to some extent. We're calling it a raffle. Of course, we can't pay everybody to be a part of this, but we can at least move in that direction and find ways to make it worth people's while, particularly for those who whose time is especially tight. We're also, we've made bookmarks, and those will be available at the library. We're going to make sure that Age-Friendly Fairfax has hopefully a presentation, all depending on COVID and what the library rules are at that time. But we will definitely have an availability at each of the individual stations there for folks to engage in the website and to get a little guidance on that from the librarians. But please, oh, and one other thing that we're doing is we're working through the Chamber of Commerce, and we're putting up flyers in all the workstations in both English and in Spanish. And if there's other languages that you guys can help clue us into that would be beneficial in those areas or other places, please do. We're open to hearing your feedback.
Lisa.
Yeah, this is great. I'm really happy to hear about the outreach efforts. I think it's a challenging time because of COVID. So, you know, a lot of times so much here in town is done in person. And so it's been a little interesting, you know, trying to get people engaged with just an online platform. Couple of the questions that I had about the outreach is, you know, there are places, I'm not sure who has the bandwidth or the time to go around and distribute these things in person, but I'm wondering about reaching out to like our senior affordable housing and other affordable housing in town, since there tend to be a lot of people with community rooms that might be interested in this. Other and I've heard that the food pantry, I think that's a great place to reach out, but I've also heard that a lot of the people that come to the food pantry aren't necessarily from Fairfax. So there might be other places, but it's really great that we're reaching out to lower income community members. And, I was wondering at one point, I think somebody talked about maybe having something at the farmer's market. Maybe that's happening. Also, there are some church congregations in town that might be a good place to get a bunch of people at once. But I'm just happy to hear that you're doing a really proactive effort of getting the word out there, because I've looked at other towns and cities websites, and so far I think that ours is like pretty great compared to a lot of what other people are doing around Marin. So I want to congratulate you on that. A couple of questions that I had. Oh, and also the Good Earth, of course, is an amazing place to put stuff out, although a lot of people that go there also are not from Fairfax, but there's a lot of Fairfaxians who go there too. I think a couple of questions that I had: when you say Chamber of Commerce and workstations, are you talking about like workplaces around town? Okay. And then two things that I wanted to comment on so far about the presentation that were really interesting. So first off, I thought that the information about the changing demographics of Fairfax was really important, and something really important to consider as we talk about ResJ, that our town is changing and that we need to make this a place that's okay for all of the people that live here. So that was very interesting. And the other thing that I'm still curious about, and you probably answered this last time, but I'll just ask again, is when the study about so sort of the AB 686 requirement of affirmatively furthering fair housing will be done and available, and what sort of, is there a public process around that, or is it mostly an analyst going through all of the census data and whatnot and policy to kind of come up with that? Thank you.
Chance?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Andy, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation back in July. I thought it was super informative. I wanted to plus one, or what Liesl had just mentioned about church congregations. It's something that I thought I was thinking about as well. Doing the rental assistance program, we realized that a lot of the lower income or people in need for rental assistance and housing related issues were plugged into those networks at our churches. And so I think that's a fabulous suggestion from Liesl. The other thing I was also thinking about in that regard is that changing demographic. I think it was that the slide had said that it was something like in the 0 to 17 age bracket, or something like 15% of individuals identified as Asian, Hispanic, or non-white. And I was curious, what sorts of outreach are you all doing to our schools in Fairfax? I recognize that there might not all be people who live right here, or it might be Ross Valley, I'm not sure, but I know you're targeting not just residents, but also people who work and sort of have community here in Fairfax as part of this process. So I was just curious about that too.
Good suggestions. Veronica?
Thanks, Bruce. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Andy, I am so grateful for your presentation and for your patience for us to be able to discuss about it with you. And I feel very inspired at the questions that you already have asked and the work that you're already doing. And just I'm really grateful to know that you're in our community and thinking the way that you are. And really grateful to be consulted as ResJ. This feels like exactly the ship and way that we have been wanting to be engaging with different committees throughout the town. So thanks for getting us off to that. And pardon me, I'm going to be looking at my phone rather than my computer because of family commitments. I'm calling in from my phone, but a couple of things, thoughts after your presentation. Also really grateful to hear about that trend of 0 to 17-year-olds, 15% of them being non-white, and have that question. Maybe you asked it during the presentation, but how do we ensure to foster those trends as a question that we lean into throughout the work that you all are doing and that ResJ is doing? And a couple of ideas in terms of how to continue to help be as inclusive as possible is to consider, if you haven't yet, doing tabling or flying at bus stops and transit centers throughout the town. And also curious if there's any ability to see, it feels ambitious, but I feel like a lot of what you're doing is ambitious and that you like that. And as do I, and I think as do we as a committee, but the idea of hitting a target to be engaging with, 90 to 100% of the non-white residents within this, acknowledging the inequitable access to housing that has plagued our town and our county at large. And perhaps you said that in the presentation, so pardon me if I had missed that that's already target, but if there's kind of a number that you're hoping to engage within the non-white demographic to make sure that we're hearing from that community specifically. And one last idea is in making sure to reach a diverse set of voices in your housing plan engagement is if it's possible to actually hire a few folks from traditionally marginalized communities and to, for a few hours, whatever it felt like worked, but to be able to then engage directly with their community so that there is that bridge rather than trying to understand how do we get to those communities. If there are people on this call, members of the community who feel like they want to be helping with that outreach, whether it's employing them, which would be ideal, of course, or rewarding them in the ways that it sounds like you're cleverly offering gift certificates and such to really make sure that we're using them if they want to be involved. And I'm going to pause there, but I'm so excited to hear your responses to all of these and to be in this dialogue with you. Thanks.
Thank you. Andy, did you have any other, that seemed like a question that brought forth some great comments.
Absolutely.
Questions?
I think this is fantastic. The churches, that is a very important place to start. And we thought of that early on, but we don't have a plan currently. So that is something that, that and also schools. So we're definitely going to go back to the drawing board on those. And if anybody has any contacts or ideas for doing that, please reach out. Just contact Ben and he can forward that information to me. And I can bring up that slide again about the changing demographics if you're interested. Would you like that? Okay. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. For somehow, I'm not sure it's not showing up on this slide. Technical issues there. It might take me a minute. But I do also want to make sure that I touch on all the things that everybody's brought up. For the senior affordable housing, I think that's a neat idea too. I hadn't considered that. One thing we have begun to do is to, and Lisa, I believe you were in that meeting with us when we were including someone who represents folks who work to support seniors in their home. And that's a community that we want to make sure that we hear their voices, because gosh, what an asset that would be in helping support everybody's quality of life. My understanding is that today, if someone was in need of help as an older adult, that you would need to employ someone for a full 8 hours because it takes them so long to commute in to the town of Fairfax. And that's because there's not enough people living within the town of Fairfax employed in that sector. So if we can connect the dots on that, that would be ideal. One idea that I know that Ben has supported often is that's a great candidate for ADUs. That could be a real place for people to, that and also of course for teachers. and I love the concept. Let's make sure that this is a place for all. And one thing that we're bringing next to our website is a way of identifying sites that feels almost like a video game. So we're hoping to attract a lot of youth in helping us with our site selection. And in some ways, this might be encouraging them to interact in deciphering where the next bit of housing might be built. And it could be their own home in the future, who knows, in a way that could help them remain in the community as they age out, instead of otherwise having to find another community to live in. And I also wanted to recognize the idea of goals. That is something that we're working with on the back end of our website for each activity that we employ within our website. And we're about to launch into the very active time period for our website, really between late August and into January. We're going to be rolling out all different kinds of activities that that people can come be attracted to come back to the site, and in an iterative way help affect our drafting of the housing element as we go along, and hopefully in playful and fun ways. And Veronica, I see your hand raised. If I just want to shout out one thing really quickly, and that's that we have a photo contest on our website right now with not one photo yet. So if everybody could spread the word, I mean, right now, if somebody could post a photo and earn the $50 reward. So win the whole contest. So let's try to encourage some competition out there. I think we have through the end of this month, and it would be great to see some fun photos. And the question is, can you share a photo that that is indicative of how is it that Fairfax feels like home to you? What is it that makes Fairfax feel like home? And it could be something very abstract. It could be your favorite birdhouse. It could be your favorite bench. It doesn't have to be your home per se. It could be all the ways that that Fairfax feels like a community that makes you feel like home. And the idea with that too is we want to build on what is that quality of life, and how can we integrate that into being harmonious with how we make room for all going forward with the housing element. Veronica, I'm gonna mute for a second.
Right, Veronica, yeah.
Thanks. Andy, wanted to encourage folks, if you're a learner like me who needs to be looking while you're listening to, the website is fairfaxspeaks.com. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes. Andy's unmuting, I think.
He gave the thumbs up too. I have a quick question, if I could jump into, which is about the sort of engagement thus far. How has it been thus far, Andy?
Well, we've gotten over 300 people taking a look at our website, and then we've got almost 40 people registered. So we're getting there. But we're about to launch with a lot more folderol, or we're getting a banner up. I think that's just coming up this next week or so. I think Ben and I are going to unfurl it tomorrow and make sure everything looks as it's supposed to. And then we've also got business cards that we're going to be sharing at the farmers markets, and flyers that we're going to put up in all different places. So we hope to get even more people engaged.
Are you?
Do you have social media presence?
Well, is this okay to share? I didn't ask, but okay. This is the website here, fairfaxspeaks.com. And the way that we have social media presence is that we have this ability for people to amplify on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, email. And also, I know that we have it on the town Facebook site, and information about it has gone out in the newsletter, I believe. So this is what the site looks like, and this is the way you navigate it. You can use the headers, or you can click on these more graphic icons here. And we've had a lot of people interested in showing us on the map some of their favorite places. And this is super helpful, and it's very timely, because this is, we're actually starting to look at all kinds of maps right now to understand. First of all, we're trying to understand where it doesn't make sense to include more housing. So what we're hearing from the, let's see, from the Affordable Housing Committee and now the Planning Commission, is the idea that everything is on the table until it's off. So we're starting to think about areas that maybe we want to make sure, usually for safety reasons, those are the kinds of things we're looking at first. But it's sure nice to see what are people's favorite places and why. It helps us understand what makes Fairfax special, because we want to try to encourage those things to be celebrated and and considered throughout this process. So this is how you get to the photo contest. It's right here where this little icon is. And then I think I'm going to extend that date again. We've extended it once, I'll extend it again. I think part of what it is we don't have a photo yet. And I think as soon as we have a couple of photos, then maybe we'll get a lot more. So it's a pretty simple thing to do. We tested it, it definitely works. We just haven't had a photo submitted yet.
And that seems like a pretty straightforward action that we, you know, as committee members, we could commit to taking, is just amplifying that too, to get the ball rolling on that too. So that's great.
Right. Can you
Thank you.
remind me how many people have logged into the or signed up for the website?
Sure. Yes, here we go. I'm going to share, if I may, I'm going to share a screen. Okay. So here we are. We've had 375 site visits. It's actually 72 registrations and 67 activated participants. That means that they've done a poll, done a survey, things like that. Things that maybe they've entered a pin on the map. So as far as talking about targets or goals, I would love to get to 1,000. That's my hope. At least 1,000 site visits, but I would love to even get to 1,000 registrants. That would be fantastic.
So may I ask, Andy, is your main interest in the website to just learn more about Fairfax and understand more what citizens are what we value here, or and then I guess also as the process moves forward and there's actually beginning to be proposals for what the housing element might look like, I assume that this would be also a site for getting feedback on that. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct. Yes. And in fact, we've got these slides here that talk about that a little bit. We don't want to do just a linear process. We don't want to just provide notice for a plan for the town's future, receive comment, and then provide a report. We're really wanting to be iterative. So the notice that we're providing is through the website. And so we're consulting with the community as we go. And in these early stages, we're really just we're really just learning from the community. Oops. And then we'll get to a place of consulting and then involving. So when we get to that place where we're talking about site scenarios and alternatives and encouraging the community to basically submit a plan. So we've got ways that that is very user friendly and folks can get their hands on it and decide where to say yes. You can certainly decide to say no to some places, and other communities have used this tool that we'll be putting forward. And what they've been able to do is get to a place where in the end, they the consultants and staff are able to bring something to the council that have at least 65% of the vote through this tool. So if we have certain sites where it's obvious that nobody wants density in those sites, then that gives us a clear directive and gets us closer to having a plan that the community can support. And that's really our goal, because we're talking about the vision for housing in the future for the town of Fairfax.
Thank you. If people, yes, Chance?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had one more comment and the other note that I think I'm sort of the time checker, and although we don't have really times, I just wanted to acknowledge that we're probably 30 minutes into this particular item, but just flagging that. And Andy, I just had one more question about the workforce. You mentioned flyering at workstations or at places where people are working around town. And Liesl had mentioned the Good Earth as sort of a hub. And obviously there are a lot of people that also are employed there. And I was just curious, are you all planning to actually engage, not only putting up the banners and flyering with the chamber, but also engaging with employers at some of these bigger places to make sure that they're, also reaching out to their workers and letting them know that their voices matter in this process too? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, that's a great point. We will be going around and requesting that the employers share the flyers, and the goal is to have them first hear about it through the president of the chamber, and so that it's not a surprise, and so that we're hopefully welcome guests, and that the flyer is something that they would support in sharing with their employees. Yeah, I would imagine an employer would love to have their employees more comfortably housed in a closer location.
Liesl, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I sort of found a version of that slide in the video, but I'm not sure it's good enough to share, but I just wanted to put it out there. And I'm just going to say that for people, let's see, ages 18 to 64, about 13% are people of color, and for people ages 65 plus, only about 4.6% are. And it's, of course, a little bit even more, diverse for ages 0 to 17. So that's just important for us to keep it as a context for the work that we're doing.
Okay. So in terms of timing, just so we can keep track of, leave room for all the things we need to talk about tonight. The next item would be discussion with Shelley Hamilton about the presentation that she also gave and is also on the town website. She asked me to text her when it was getting close to time, because she's going to have to try to break out of another meeting, and she's now trying to find her way into the site, so into our meeting. So I think she will be here and we can watch for her. So, and it does sound like, from what Andy, what I've heard you say, it seems that you would be open to further ideas or interaction with people on this committee through, then they can reach you through Ben and at the town.
Absolutely.
At townoffairfax.org.
Thank you. And just quickly, this is the slide. I'm hoping that's visible to everyone.
Mhm.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have shared this and to receive your suggestions and comments. And I'm sure we'll be reporting back and letting you know how things are going along the way, either via Ben. Oh, I see Serena has their hand up.
Sorry, can I just make another comment? I think maybe if you're trying to reach youth, something like an Instagram page might be helpful. Like I know a lot of students are maybe following their schools, so that could be some place to look for people.
I'm sorry, where did you say on the page?
Instagram, making an Instagram, like social media.
Oh, Instagram. Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Andy. And we might be you might be hearing more from people on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
So the next agenda item would be to do a similar talk with Shelley Hamilton about the presentation that she gave, which was also on the same meeting, July 1st meeting, and is also on the town website under that meeting. However, Shelley has told me that it doesn't seem that she's going to be able to make it. So I guess we'll have to table that continue that until the next meeting as people wish. But I would assume we would like to do that. And so we can do that at the end of the meeting when we talk about next meetings. Veronica?
Before we table it fully, I'm just curious if there's an opportunity to touch base as a committee about it. Not that we'll have our full wraparound discussion, or I imagine there's questions.
I think that would be fine under the agenda item. We should take public comment and then we can discuss it. And then, yeah, that's a good point. Lisa?
I just wanted to mention also, I think there were more than 15 people online when we watched these presentations on July 1st, and they have been on the website for a while. So I encourage people to check them out. They're pretty good.
Okay. So it sounds like the sense is that we should go ahead with this agenda item number 2, even without Shelley being here right now. And so we should take public comment really quickly on that item. So again, this would be a discussion of the what Shelley presented regarding proposal to make some non-content related, but edits to the Fairfax general plan wording, which she described much more clearly in the presentation. And so if we can open public comment, and I'm also going to just tell Shelley that we're going ahead and we're going to talk about it tonight anyway. Thank you. Ann.
Okay, so there are a few hands up, and we are going to go with Mark Bell. And just a reminder that you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Mark.
That's from before. I haven't raised my hand yet on this item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay. So we will go to the next person, and that is Naomi. And Naomi, go ahead. Naomi, are you there?
I think Mark is still on.
Yeah, I'll be taking him off.
Okay, I think I was just able to unmute. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being there, and thanks to Andy and to Shelley, who's not there right now, for their presentations at the last meeting. I found them both really informative and helpful. Appreciated both of them a lot. With regard to Shelley's presentation, I was really struck by her description of her process around looking at these documents, and really struck by her her encouragement to think past the generalized idea of what the character of the town is and look into, you know, trying to understand what the specificity of you know, this idea of character is, so that we can you know, get past any kind of ideas of character that may have some kind of racial or class-based component that may not be visible on the surface of that kind of a descriptor, but that we can get beyond by getting more nuanced in our description of what's important about our town and what we really care about. So so I found that really, really valuable, and I just appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nan.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the next speaker is Patrice. Patrice, go ahead.
Hi, committee. I just wanted to echo the last caller in a lot of ways. I thought that the intent of changing the content was great. I don't think the execution's even close. There were words that made me as an African American, my hairs stand up. Rural. When I think rural, I think scary. Small town. I also think scary, but if you talk about the community that's being built here in this idyllic town, it's very, very different. I took my glasses off. And I think that all of the content and the copy that goes into this should be focus grouped with people of color, because there's no way that you guys are going to get it right without hitting someone under the belt. And I think that it should be written in terms of the town values. Like, what do we stand for? What do we want to stand for? And then go, so think of that as being micro and go macro from there. But please, let's not offend with something we're trying to use to help.
Thank you, Patrice.
Okay, thank you. And there are no other hands on this topic.
Okay, so we can bring it back to the committee. And Shelley says that she actually suggested that it would be great if the committee wanted to discuss this, and she would try to hear what that discussion was about, probably through Anne. So. And the public comment as well, she'll hear. Lisa.
Yes, I wanted to apologize. I'm trying not to interact with people in the community when they're speaking, but there was one comment. Can I comment on a comment? Okay, well, I will, since nobody's saying no. There was discussion, and I think it would be great to have further discussion, especially with people of color in town, about the perceptions of some of the wording in the general plan and other documents. Rural, for me, also caused me some concern, just because I have some feelings about how people perceive what rural means. And too often I hear it used as sort of the opposite of urban, and urban representing a sort of racialized view of life. So I appreciated that comment. And I just wanted to note that this is a really nice first step in thinking about how we think about planning and the words we use in town. And as many of the things we've been able to look at so far, it's a first step towards more substantive work. So, you know, I also wanted to mention that, so I think we might want to talk about what are the next steps with this proposal, like what's going to happen to actualize it, and should it move forward, or should we be having focus groups, as Patrice mentioned. Another couple of things that are happening around some of these issues are, of course, the county's rolled out its racial covenants website, and there is a process for people to look at their housing deeds and think about and look at whether or not they have racially restrictive language in that, and to go ahead and make a change to their deed if indeed they find that language, and it is fairly pervasive and you have to really search for it. So those are both like wording issues that, though they sound symbolic, they do have some importance for us all learning and thinking about how we present our town and our homes, and how we move forward in the future, but also learning about why things are the way they are right now. And then finally, I'm just going to note that there are other things that can be done that are maybe more substantive in the future, springing off of these to address racial issues around housing and lack of housing. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Mhm. Veronica?
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, I'm so grateful for the time and effort that Shelley has put into doing this. And as Naomi acknowledged in her comment too, feel really grateful for the ways that Shelley acknowledged her responsibility in helping draft the general plan and in becoming more aware of the way that the language within the general plan is exclusive and perpetuates a sense of our town not feeling as welcoming to everybody, and just naming her own commitment to writing that to the degree that her involvement can, and just want to acknowledge that even though she's not here. And I hope that we can all learn from that in all the ways that we all can. And to emphasize that her suggestions we're not changing any policies or programs or principles, but that it really is in terms of recognizing the impact of the language within the general plan, and wanting to take strides as a town committed to anti-racism, to naming when that needs to change. And so I do think having a focus group with more folks of color, because on the policy committee, it is just Lisa and myself, and then we fortunately have a lot of support and contribution from Stephanie Hellman that we've welcomed on as a member of the public. But all three of us identify as white, and so we do need very much to make sure that any of the work that ResDay recommends to town council, or anything that we put out elsewhere, really has, it not only is contributed to by folks of color, but what I would love, and I think we all would love, to have it be led by folks of color, and that's something that we need to be thinking about as a committee and as a town as we move forward too, for sure. So Patrice, I'm really grateful for that feedback. And as far as next steps, I feel curious around like the idea of just, we're not, Shelley's not saying we're going to make a whole new general plan, which is something that does happen. Is it every 10 years, Bruce?
It can be edited at fairly frequently, but it's a 30-year general plan. So
yeah, so
that's part of the general plan. So the housing element will certainly be changed, and with the housing element update will go land use, some updates to the land use and the safety elements. So the general plan will be opened in the next year.
Is that once a year? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, Lisa. No, ask your question.
So I was of the impression, and maybe I misheard, that there can only be changes made, like once a year or something, or is that incorrect?
Yeah, it can't be changed daily. I thought it was up to 4 times a year, but you might be right. It might be up to once a year. In either case, it's far less frequently than that general plans are usually updated, and ours hasn't been updated since it was adopted.
So I just want to say that this even goes further along the suggestion that was made by a speaker, which was that if we want to change it, it seems like we're going to change it all at once rather than going back and go, whoops, we missed something, because then that won't change till like another year or something, right? So anyway.
Just wanted to plug that it is quarterly, or four times calendar year.
Yeah, that was my understanding. Veronica, you might not have been finished though.
Thanks, Bruce. I'll finish quickly. It's just this sense of kind of trying to understand that I don't want perfect to be the enemy of good in terms of making some progress in terms of editing and addressing the general plan, but still knowing it's not ever a set in stone document and that we can continue to go back and work with it. But it does sound like it might be great for us to connect, to regroup with Shelley and to communicate with her about having a group, maybe inviting members of the public for an hour-long conversation to give specific feedback. So it's not part of an entire ResJ meeting. Maybe it's a special ResJ meeting that we do.
Mhm.
That's all.
Thanks. Or something like a public workshop or something on the topic, specifically on that topic. Yeah. Thanks. And I guess I would add that I think in terms of how to implement these ideas, I think that staff time will probably be a pretty major part of the equation, because the amount of the number of steps that would be required, even if the wording was completely finished, but to do public workshops and so forth, it's a big deal to edit the general plan, and the planning part of the staff is pretty fully occupied with the housing element work. But it's that's not to speak for them, but that's my understanding, that it's they're pretty booked at this point. So may I ask, just for future planning, and maybe we can just discuss this at the end of the evening when we talk about future agenda items. Do we want to try to invite Shelley back another day, another time? Yeah, I'm seeing a yes generally for that. Okay, yeah, okay. Is there anything more on this at this point, or do we want to move on to the next agenda item? I'm sorry, I'm just really trying to find my way here. I wish I weren't sharing. And if anyone wants to help, please do. We're ready to move on to the next item? Is that? Yeah, okay. Okay. The next item on the agenda is general. I was asked by a couple of committee members to put this on for a special meeting, and then we weren't able to have that. And so it's along with other items on this meeting, but we just called it a review and discussion of recent council decisions regarding ResJ and the public comment received. And I'd be happy to, and Chance and I would, I'm sure, be happy to answer any questions or give a report on that if there's any clarity needed on recent council actions. But this sounded like what was wanted, what was needed was just a chance for the committee to really discuss where things are. So if we can start out with to invite the public to comment on this agenda item. And
yeah, so at the moment, I don't see any hands up. Oh, hold on. Okay, Mark, you have 3 minutes.
I was trying to raise my hand on the last item, number one, to support what Patrice is saying. And, you know, when you're looking at trying to change language, Fairfax is a small town. And I just find that, you know, trying to change it into something else can be a slippery slope, as she pointed out. As far as this, we're talking about council decisions, like which council decisions, which ones concerning the ResJ? Are you talking about the ones from last night? Are you talking about for previous discussions? So how can you turn it over for public comment without us having more of a basis on which to comment? I really don't understand how you're running a meeting like this, Mayor Ackerman, by having the public supposedly commenting on they don't know what. Now, if you want me to continue with what I was reading last night, I'll be happy to. Like we had the issue where nobody voted to pull the videos that were paid for with public funds off of the town website. There's no link to the YouTube Town of Fairfax page where all the videos are located so that you can go back and watch the ones that are posted there. But it really makes it appear that you're trying to hide those videos. I mean, if I had spent $65,000 for that travesty, maybe I would too. Also, what I brought up yesterday, all these meeting agendas were constructed to limit public comment in order to circumvent the Brown Act. You know, according to your facilitator, who you all love, only actionable items were those to be considered, and that's not how the statute reads. So basically, all your previous meetings were illegal. So why did we pay for them? The rough draft of the mission statement, which called for Fairfax residents to pay reparations to all people of color, especially the Miwok. The wording was changed, but if you know what the original intent was, it is obvious that it is still one of the principal goals of the Res-J. Other things that have happened, double standards for the public at large, meaning those of Caucasian origin not on the Res-J, and anyone on the Res-J. There was publicly no reaction except from Barbara Cola regarding we know who. And then another member of the comment inferred that if the town hired anyone from Marin as the new town manager, there would most likely be Caucasian and therefore racist. I don't get it. Where were you? Spaced as usual? This is totally unacceptable behavior. And as you look at the book from Ibram X. Kendi, How to Be an Anti-Racist, you're supposed to be actively going to this. Oh, you're holding up another sign. My 3 minutes are up. Good. I'll just continue it on another item when I have 3 more minutes.
Okay.
And we don't know what we're talking about. Go ahead.
Okay. I do not see any other hands up for this item.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the committee. I'm open to suggestions for how to do this because I understand the committee would like to have a discussion, and I think probably people have things on their minds. I don't know what they are, and I don't feel really comfortable having to. Veronica, do you have a suggestion? Or just want to start the discussion, whichever.
Yeah, I would suggest a practice that we did a few months or kind of adopted as a committee maybe 5 or 6 months ago, of letting the folks of color communicate first on, defaulting to making sure that they get the opportunity to be heard first. So Serena and Ty, you have anything that they'd like to share, that they're welcome to begin first. No pressure, ladies.
Sounds like a good start.
I think we both have something to share tonight. This is hard, and this will be my last Res-J meeting. I'm resigning tonight. It has been a difficult decision to make, but one that's been in the making since February. So I'm just going to read my statement. I believe that the town of Fairfax needs the Res-J, but we weren't set up to succeed. Our mission was to eliminate racial inequities and social injustices in the town, but our meetings were so toxic and filled with ego and silencing of Black and brown voices that we could not get past that and on to the work. Once our committee was in a good place and we started to get the work done in our subcommittees, we were barraged by hate from the public. After the July 7th town council meeting, I realized that we're not going to be able to move forward in our work. The comments that came into the town council about the Res-J were the worst that I'd heard yet against us. And as harmful as they were for me, the silence of the council members was what solidified my decision. If the town council cannot interrupt and disrupt racially charged public comments, then they are perpetuating the narrative. And because We are a volunteer committee that reports and advises the town council. We will never feel like we are 100% supported by them. We have been called bigots, closed-minded, divisive, and racist by community members in public comment and in print. I do not feel the need to continuously put myself in the direct line of harm from public comment to try and make our town a more racially equitable place. Thank you.
If I could just continue on, I'll be reading on behalf of myself and Sophia. So I'm just reading the statement that Sophia wrote. She said, as a young person of color in the community, I was optimistic that ResJ was an indicator that Fairfax valued and respected those perspectives and experiences. However, throughout my time on the ResJ, I have felt invalidated not only through my voice, but my racial identity as well. In my own personal experience, I often felt dismissed or not taken seriously due to my age and race. At one point, I learned that the racial background I identify with has put into question its authenticity regarding demographics of the ResJ. It has taken me over a decade to come to terms with and accept who I am. While I was hoping that the ResJ would be an opportunity to further that progress, I was disappointed to experience it doing just the opposite for me. The idea behind the ResJ, I do believe, had much potential and promise. However, it quickly became apparent that this would be no different than any other committee where Black and Brown voices would be drowned out, dismissed, and disrespected. It is one thing for a group to have a neutral impact, but when harm is actively being caused, that is when change needs to happen. Now I will read my own. The ResJ was created with the aim of being an inclusive environment that would create solutions for the systemic issues that plague Fairfax. My experience of being a member of it has shown me just how deep these issues are. As a member of the ResJ, I have been putting myself in danger to participate in a performative cause that has not been able to make any real or lasting change. I have been held up by the town of Fairfax as a token to show progress that does not exist. When I have been asked questions or requested support that I needed, I have continuously been ignored or turned away. The ResJ has been treated as if it is a temporary subcommittee that can quickly solve centuries-long issues and then be disbanded. It ignores the real causes for the inequity that exists in Marin County and the rest of the world, and believes that small changes being made in the town will solve racism. In being a member of the ResJ, I've had to censor myself and have been limited from having conversations with my fellow members, which is counterproductive to the work that ResJs aim to do. The warning signs have been apparent to me since the selection process for this subcommittee, but I chose to stay and hoped to make real change. I am now choosing to leave because I see that that will not be possible here. And then this is on behalf of all of us. We are not resigning from the ResJ because we want to quit this work. We will be forming our own group, Ross Valley Unite, alongside with Liesl, Veronica, and Alexandra outside of the town committee to continue the conversation of racial equity and social justice and enact some of the ideas that we have been unable to put into motion. We welcome anyone to reach out to us or join us through our Instagram at Ross Valley Unite. Thank you.
I think I see Veronica's hand.
I'm very sorry. Speaking for myself, if I may, and I understand and can't fully understand, but I hear what Tayu said in particular about the council not being able to really step up and address the comments that we've received. And all I can say is I apologize for that. I'm a total amateur at this. have no idea how to do this job. I don't know how many people watched the meeting last night, but we did certainly make some comments last night, but it's just a very difficult position to be in. But I didn't know what you folks wanted to say tonight, but I sort of had a sense that it might be something like this. And I support you in that decision. And thank you for all that I've learned from you, and I hope to continue to learn. That's all I can think of to say at the moment. Thank you.
I think Veronica had her hand up.
Yeah, Veronica.
Sophia and Serena and Tayo, I hope you know that I am in full support of you choosing to take care of yourselves in this way and acknowledging that this is not supporting you, as Alexandra voiced when she resigned. The toxicity of having to show up to hearing anything other than gratitude and support and constructive suggestions is what you should expect showing up to any volunteer committee for the town, but especially as women of color doing racial equity work. I just really see you and really respect the move that you're making. I'm deeply disappointed that you weren't able to be lifted up in this space the way that you deserve. And I'm really grateful for the relationships that I've gotten to create with each of you. And I'm especially blown away by those of you, as well as former members who are just graduating high school and college, or just recently graduated college. I hope you know that the way that you were treated in this work, in this community, bravely forging a path of anti-racism in our town as women of color, has been wholly unacceptable. And that your resilience, your patience, and your grace, and how you've held it all, though you didn't have to hold it that way, has been radically inspiring to me. So I hope that this doesn't deter your willingness to try again in different communities, and to trust that you're going to be lifted up and treated in a way that sees what you have to offer, rather than is pushing against what's possible and what you have available. So I'll stop there. I have no doubt this is just the beginning of many of your, not just the beginning, but just a sliver of what's ahead. And I'm really honored and excited to continue to show up for you, to be alongside you. And yeah.
So I thought a lot about this, and I just wanted to say that I've so loved the dream that Rose Day represented. I really looked forward to working with this wonderful group of Fairfax residents to make real and lasting change. And this effort started out with such hope and such goodwill, and it really brought forward a lot of voices that haven't been heard in the discourse around the future of our town. So today I'm feeling like really sad and ashamed for Fairfax. Out of the many Marin towns, Fairfax is seen as very liberal, but it's in liberal Fairfax that the animosity toward this effort seems like it's been maybe the most extreme. I try to remind myself that some of that fire has really come from a fairly small group of people. It's not necessarily representative of the entire town as a whole, but it's kind of hard to forget some of the comments that have come up attempting to discount and erase the committee members' very real experiences of racism in this town. Comments suggesting that everyone on the committee thinks exactly the same way. That's a form of stereotyping and othering, that members of the committee are dysfunctional, and that this committee has no right to exist in the first place. And I have to say that no other committee that I know of in this town has experienced this level of scrutiny and hostility. We don't even tape a lot of the other committees, and then we're being accused of trying to circumvent the Brown Act here. This othering and silencing is really shocking coming from a town that prides itself on its liberalism and tolerance. So in this respect, I think Fairfax is sadly more like other parts of America than maybe it likes to think itself to be. The ResJ did not create division in Fairfax. That division pre-existed the creation of ResJ and has been apparent in just about every town council meeting for the last several years. I think, as I've said before, that simply pointing out that there's an issue that needs to be addressed isn't creating division. And as our housing element consultant noted, our town's demographics are changing, and we really need to think about how this generational change may be uncomfortable for some people. I hear fears that questioning police behavior will undermine police support for fighting crime and assisting with evacuations, that acknowledging the fact that this land was occupied by white settlers against the will of its original inhabitants will somehow jeopardize those of us who are white and own property here. I just feel that there's a lot of fear being directed at a group of people who's just done their best to try to address the issues. But change is coming, and we need to make this a town that welcomes everybody. So I'd hope that my committee would embark on a systematic exploration of policies that Fairfax has either undertaken or could undertake to do better around racial equity. I had all kinds of hopes and plans, as I think everybody on this committee did. And I can understand why people are resigning now. I cannot see this work moving forward without the leadership of the BIPOC members who are understandably resigning. So this committee may disband, but I think, as Tayu noted, or actually not Tayu, I'm sorry, it was Serena, its members will remain a positive force for change in Fairfax, and I'm standing in support of this effort. Thank you.
Unless there's anything else, Chance, were you about to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, Tayu, please. I mean, there isn't much more that needs to be said either. And I think the silence says a lot in itself. And I think the silence of a committee that had such great intentions that might not be existing any longer that'll be another silence that I think our town will feel. Though Ross Valley Unites is a great name, and it's great to know that this work will continue in ways and in spaces where it won't feel as hostile and as harmful. And yeah, I guess I just wanted to apologize too. I think there's one of the norms of this that has been developed by this committee talks about a sort of like I wish I had it pulled up again, but it was a type of activism that is sort of like leisurely activism, and the privileges that
activism. Yeah.
What? Say that again. Sorry.
Privilege of leisurely activism is
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So that I think that shows up. That shows up at town council in the sort of the fear of making missteps, or the fear of not knowing exactly how to navigate that. But I am disappointed in myself for perpetuating that that leisurely activism and just living in that privilege of it too. And I'm sorry to the committee members for feeling like they were not fully supported as we took comments that, you know, really displayed a certain amount of fragility, white fragility at times, and yeah, made folks feel unwelcome and unsafe. And I think it just goes to show that the work is more necessary and more vital than we've already known that we've known it to be necessary and vital, but the backlash that you all have received and that we as a town have received for exploring and engaging with this necessary work of anti-racism, a long way to go. And even though you all might be doing that outside of town structures and will be doing that outside of town structures, I just wanted to, you know, always welcome you back to private conversations with your representatives and to town council meetings and places where we can try to work together to realize that vision of anti-racism that I think we all know is somewhere in the depths of the heart of Fairfax and the community that I think people really do want, and are just, some folks are just afraid to reach out and learn what it's like to build a stronger and a more resilient community that celebrates everyone. So I'm sorry, and thank you all for your courage and your bravery and for speaking tonight and sharing your truth. And I really appreciate you all and everything you've given to the town.
It comes to me to say one last thing, which is that though I'm so sorry that you all and other people who have already left this committee have had to put your bodies on the line in order to have this conversation. In a way, it's been a learning experience for Fairfax, and there are a lot more people paying attention than the people who comment or who are even on this particular meeting, which are a mix of people and attitudes already. But there's been a learning, and I thank you for what you have done to show us. Maybe it might be said, hold a mirror up to the community. And I think things will continue on. I hope you are a part of that, and it's a more satisfying journey for you. But it's difficult, and this is, it has already begun. You've already accomplished a lot, even though it's been painful, and it doesn't feel like it's anything like a resolution at this time, but you've shown some things to this community. I hope we, the members of the community who are white and who can go through a day without thinking about this, or a week or a month without thinking about this, that we will think about it a lot more as a result. So thank you. Lisa?
I just wanted to add that, you know, there really is a place for disagreement and constructive criticism, and that's never been an issue for us on Rose J. I think that the issue is that, you know, I mean, there's things I might have done differently in hindsight, you know, sure, and there were great things that some people from the community said. I thought, oh, maybe we should do it that way. However, a lot of the criticism didn't come from a place of compassion, since the stated intent of a number of the speakers is that the whole committee should not exist in the first place. So that was hard. And I kind of hope people will think that if you come from a place of compassion and tell people what you think should change, they might listen to you and things might be different. And, you know, I think that there was just a lot of uncomfortability expressed about the fact that we existed in the first place. So, just in terms of people listening, I just hope some of the speakers will think about coming from a different place. If you have criticism and not assuming, I always say assume benevolence, that people aren't doing something because they're trying to do something nasty to you per se until you find out otherwise, that they may simply have not understood something or have had a different idea about it than you did, and that they were not trying to do something terrible to you or the Brown Act or what have you, that in fact, people are trying very hard to listen and have a constructive conversation.
No, Veronica.
I am really curious about what this means for us as a town moving forward. I'm curious about what it means for conversations that town council will be having, continue to be having. I know you have so much on your plate with an interim town manager. It's not the only thing on your plate with the Brown deputy chief, with all of the things that you really hope it doesn't get put on the back burner now. I hope that this isn't like a sense of, okay, well, that didn't work and now we'll just move forward, but to really pause and breathe into what this reflects is needed and what room there is for us to lean in and not back away and let it just simmer, because there's so much that can be worth our time right now. But this racial equity and social justice needs to continue to be at the forefront of everything that we're doing. And so I'm just really curious in a broader sense, but in a real specific sense of, so what next? I can't, as Leo still said, imagine being, can't imagine, it is not appropriate to be operating as a group committed to racial equity, and yet we can't even retain members of color on our committee because of the volatility that they experience. So that just feels like, wow, yeah, what do we actually do with that? Well, of course we need to pursue racial equity work at the policy level in our town, but yeah, so I'm not suggesting anything, but just raising some of the questions that are arising in me. And the last thing I'll say is curious, Serena and Tayu, if there's any last ways that you can ask for support from us on this committee right now, or if there's any last, doesn't have to be last, but any specific ways that we can support you in this moment.
Thank you, Veronica. I think that, the thing I'm most grateful for the ResJ is just meeting all of you and having you all in my life forever, whether it be here or outside of this computer Zoom, but in real life. So I am just grateful for you and everything you stand for, Veronica, and all of you.
I'll just second what Tayu said. I don't have anything necessarily to add.
Well, thank you. I give you my best wishes and for my gratitude for your strength and for a chance to get to know you a bit. We can continue in some form through this long unwinding process. Okay. We have two more items on the agenda, which were to receive reports from the subcommittees, the PPPSA and the Community Education Subcommittee. I actually neglected to ask about the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, but maybe I'll go back now and just ask, are those still relevant at this point, or we can take them off the agenda, we can table them. That's certainly within our prerogative, but if those committees want to give a report.
Community engagement never met, so we haven't met since we last reported. We only have 2 members, me and Serena.
And PPPSA is not really met. Veronica.
Yeah, in terms of the appropriateness, you kind of said, does it feel appropriate to talk about those subcommittees? It feels like the obvious next logistical step for the committee is in this time, in this space, since Tayo and Serena, are you comfortable staying on as we hold this conversation to just ask, like, to really think about what does it mean for us to, where do we go from here? Feels like that takes precedent over any subcommittee report.
Mm-hmm. So we'll take the subcommittee reports off the agenda, and if we want to continue with this discussion, yes, we certainly can. And why don't we just do it as a popcorn style? I really don't feel like I should be chairing this discussion. Strange position to be in.
I think that, I mean, I don't know what the future it would be, but I think that there are a few things that were in the works that would be really sad if ResJ is disbanded, if those things like the survey that PPPSA was working on falls to the wayside. And I think that if there's a way for town council to create an ad hoc committee or a task force that can get certain things done that we were doing, I think that would be wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Veronica.
Yeah, I really appreciate that idea, Tayo, to be able to fully see through any of the that we have, and by see through I mean make recommendations to town council, and then town council can them or bring them back to us, and we can decide from there what we do. But it feels like taking on more work. Wow. And even doing that work, though, you know, as Patrice mentioned, in terms of the general plan edits, like how do we, I guess that just needs to be a, as you mentioned, Bruce, like a town workshop where maybe as we have some type of until these projects that we've opened up are seen to fruition, if that's where they're meant to go, where we have some type of input that's available on a monthly basis particularly for folks of color. But I just don't even know without leaving out or excluding white folks, but really acknowledging that equity means noticing who we haven't had at the table and why, and making sure that those people are not only at the table, but are leading the conversation. Just, I'm confused about how we actually do that, though, without quorum.
Yeah.
Now, because there will be only 4 of us, though I'm grateful that council minimized it to, is it 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess the thought I would have is that though the ResJ's specific purpose was to work together to make recommendations to council, anybody can make recommendations to council, including the group RV Ross Valley Unites. So, and any of you as individuals. So people who are working together on a project, working with Shelley. I don't see any reason why any of that needs to stop, because you're still here, we're still here, and that's what we're here for. So it may turn out that not doing it in such a formal and stilted atmosphere is a lot easier. It may be that council can hear the brunt of the comments and you won't have to, but I hope it just goes better. But I don't want to minimize the sense that I feel and have been feeling for a while that this is not going well in this town. And as I think Chance and I both said in our own ways last night, it's really disappointing to see how Fairfax has treated this simple attempt to raise important issues and to talk about who we are, who we all are, and how we can make the town a better place. That should incite such fear and such reaction. And that people should just, I would say, somehow feel that because they're the public and because they're taxpayers and because they get to speak, they can just cut loose with whatever venom. It's really disappointing. Not the first time we've seen it in Fairfax. Not at all.
But probably the first time that that sort of like vitriolic rhetoric's been directed towards youth and young leaders that are up and coming and will be community members for the foreseeable future, I hope. But yeah, it's you already know.
Well, I also just want to say, in terms of public engagement, some of this really dampens the willingness of the public in general. And I think now people of color in particular to participate in town committees or public comment at town council meetings because, who wants to subject yourself to that? So I just think as a town, we need to kind of think about how we foster a more inclusive space in general.
And if I may, there's a question that Veronica put out there about not only the work of the ResJ, but sort of town council meetings and things like that moving forward, like lessons learned and what's the feed forward there. And there are, I've been trying to grok this a little bit, and I mean, I think there's just the general sentiment that some of the members of the community are also appointed volunteers and volunteer leaders with our town, and they should be held to a certain standard of conduct as volunteers and representatives of our town, and that's one piece that should be put into effect. The other is that there are groups that have formed in other communities. I think Orange County may have had issues like this. I'm sure plenty of communities have issues like this with the Brown Act and the public hateful rhetoric that can occur and harmful rhetoric that can occur. And there, Orange County has a Human Relations Commission that created some guidelines and practice standards for public forums to try to engage with this sort of prickly subject of both the Brown Act, people being allowed to have public comment, and also, obviously, of course, people's freedom of speech, and also at the same time figuring out how to address really harmful rhetoric at public meetings that can actually be quite disruptive too, and can erode the trust of community members and volunteers in engaging in discussions in public forums. So it's something that we might want to think about and speak with our colleagues, Bruce, and also maybe interim town manager, as well as our town attorney, about revisiting guidelines. We bring them up at the beginning of our public meetings at town council, but making sure that that kind of stuff is apparent everywhere, and maybe even that we enforce that more consistently.
Good suggestion. And yes, on our council meetings, we have a thing we read at the beginning that predates my time on the council, but not by too much. And the reason that it's there about conduct at the meetings is because of times when it got to where it was felt that that was really needed to explicitly say that we need to treat each other like with compassion and as humans, although that's not what it says. It's a little different than that, but yes, it's always been a surprise to me. And Fairfax has a history. When I first moved to Fairfax, which was in '93, the town council itself was divided. It was a 3-2 division between warring camps. And they sat on opposite sides of the podium, and the planning commission had that same division of the loyalists to the camps and sat on opposite sides of their dais. And that was just what it was explained to me, that was what Fairfax politics was about by someone who was clearly a member of one of those camps, that what it was all about was defending the town against the horrors of the other camp. And there just continues to be repercussions of that time. I think that's part of what happens. Just that kind of mindset that public comment is can be so angry. But yes, as Chance said, this is unique and more sad than usual, because it's not just that council members have to have thick skins and that most people wouldn't consider running for council, but this is way worse. Attacking your identity, attacking your desire to volunteer and to be part of the town, to help the town. I'm sorry. But yes, I think some way for council to discuss this. This is the time. Veronica?
Just to recap a few of the things sounded like were suggestions around maybe a recommendation to town council to allow us to be a task force, so we can continue to just wrap up things that we've been working on, that we can still certainly make recommendations, as Bruce said, to town council, just as any member of the public can, as Ross Valley Unite can. and that we can continue to work with each other in those ways. Obviously, we won't be accessing any of the funding in that other space, and so I'll pause and recap a little more before I ask that question. An opportunity that Orange County working group, the Human Rights Commission, or the Human Response, what was it, Chance?
I think it's Human Relations Commission.
Yeah. Like Human Dignity Commissions. Yeah, so like, is that the next step, that we need to start at square one here around how we're engaging with each other as community members, especially on difficult conversations? And so just for me, my sense of knowing that we are moving forward in the sense of not letting this work fizzle. It sounds like there's three at least options there that we could sit with ourselves. Or is there any desire to actually make any recommendations to council tonight, so that we then don't find ourselves in the loop of not being able to meet and make recommendations as a committee? Does that make sense? But I don't want to rush anything either. Just curious there.
Again, there's no reason that any of you individually, as a small group or as a larger group, can't make recommendations to council at any time. They wouldn't, you can always just email or speak at the meetings. Emailing is probably easier because you can put something in writing, you can put materials on it, you can send stuff to the council and bring it to the council members' attention.
And I'll just piggyback on that to just say that, and we didn't agendize any particular actions in that regard, just Brown Act type thing, right? However, of course, former ResJ members and collectively writing to town officials, I think it still has a similar effect as something coming from the ResJ.
Yeah. So, Veronica.
I've noticed that I'm speaking a lot, and so I'll make this my last, unless there feels like something that is really important around protecting other people or speaking up to other people. But the question of where the budget that ResJ was allocated, what happens with that, feels to me like it's so important that whether it sounds like maybe we won't be able to make any formal recommendations about that, but just want to keep that on people's minds, and that we, town council, I believe that both you, Bruce, and Chance would hold the intention and commitment to ensuring that that money gets directly allocated to racial equity work, and whatever shape that ends up looking like. Seems like education and there's a lot of things that our work has shown us need to be talked about and done. And so maybe town council, maybe we make recommendations as individuals to town council to host certain things, and that money can be, and by we, I mean members of the public, everybody, that are very centered around racial equity, and that's where that money stays. And just want to put in that hope and request.
Yeah, thank you. Let's please keep talking, keep communicating. Learning.
I think I had committed to just being the time checker and was just gonna say that we had, 35 minutes left of the entire meeting. I don't know how we want to use that time. Bruce, do we have to have open time at the end and then
I
closing
believe
comments?
we do. We do have to have open time at the end because this was a regular meeting. So I hope that the public can avoid whatever desire they might have to make it even more difficult. We can just do that, please. Whenever we're ready to close this agenda item out, that would be what's next, and then they're closing.
And the other thing, I guess is just if any members of this committee are feeling uncomfortable or are not feeling comfortable with public comments, or if someone says something that's harmful or inappropriate or derogatory or anything like that, feel free to depart or do what you need to do to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. This is beyond ridiculous. So shall we open it up for public comment for items not on the agenda? And for the public, we don't need to comment. We can just let it rest for a bit. There's no requirement.
Would you like me to go?
Yeah.
I really hope it can be kind. So John and Jane, go ahead. 3 minutes.
Hi, members of the committee. This is John Romatis. I just have an off-the-wall question. I'm not going to try and be mean. I understand what's going on here. I've been listening, and it's I feel for what you guys are going through. I just would like a show of hands. You don't have to. And this, have any of you ever had a police officer point a gun at your head? If you have, you can raise your hand. Just random question. Okay, that's one thing. I've heard a lot tonight. I've taken it in. I've heard a lot of, I think, adjectives: hateful, harmful, and rhetoric. I've heard vitriolic and rhetoric, animosity, othering, attached, occupied by white settlers, needs, and we. I also heard by we, I mean members of the public. So first, let me just, Serena and Tayu, I hope that this hasn't, just know that I think the people who are perhaps a little, what's the right word? They're passionate about things, and I don't think anybody's racist. Nobody's would ever, none of my friends, or I don't think anybody would put anybody down for anything and hold anything. They're not racist people. And maybe you could, if you're moving on to the Ross Valley United, I hopefully you can take this away, that perhaps all these adjectives I just spelled out, they seem to be directed away from the committee. Perhaps that I think the committee should reflect, perhaps that they have been putting out harmful words and harmful rhetoric. It's not, it's a two-way street, right? You reap what you sow kind of thing. And I'm not here to blame this or that. And I hope that, that I've always hoped that things can happen in a civilized way. And this is very passionate. And when I think if people feel that they're being bullied, which I think, or they've, like as a committee, people are saying, well, hey, this is what it is, and we need to do this and we need to do that. And then if the public stands up and says, hey, well, I don't feel that way. We don't feel that way. And, and I'll just say this, for one, I don't think pointing out people's race and picking people based on the color of their skin and all this I'm a firm believer that that's not healthy. I mean, that's just not healthy. It's not going to get us anywhere. You're ostracizing people, and it's divisive. And you have a different school of thought, and that's clear, and that's fine. Maybe that the takeaway here is that perhaps you should consider what the public has to say a little deeper. But that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you. Next person in line is Naomi. Go ahead, Naomi. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm feeling a lot, as I know that all of you are right now too. And Serena and Tayu and Sophia, I want to apologize to you on behalf of this town or certain members of this town. And, I know that no one of us can apologize on everyone's behalf, but I'm so sorry for what you have had to go through, and what other members of color of this committee have had to go through this process. And I had so much hope for this committee, and I'm really very disappointed in this town, and want to uplift and support you all in whatever way I can. I'm really excited to see what Ross Valley Unite can be. I would love to join you in whatever way I can, in supporting any actions that you will be taking. And I really hope to see the work that this committee has done so far, of which there has been much. I really hope to see many of those things move forward in this town, whether it's through recommendations from Ross Valley Unite or from town council members, receiving input from members of the community who maybe have been part of this committee, or just members of the community in general who want to continue to see that work followed through on. So I look forward to supporting you all moving forward, and really appreciate all of the time that you have put into this and all of the energy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Naomi. Next person is Jess. Go ahead, Jess. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. This is Jess Lerner, and I just wanted to comment. So first, I just want to say thank you so much to all of you who have been doing this hugely important work and bearing the weight of what you have for the past many months, and really grateful to you for your strength and stamina, and for everyone on this committee who is both present and has not been present today or more recently, and what it's been like to go through all of that. I also want to apologize because this is, like, I think one of the only times we can comment is at the end of these meetings, and I have an ongoing conflict on Thursday night, so I am not completely up to date. So right now, I just want to share that, I know some of what's been happening. I have to catch up on a lot of the ResJ meetings that I've missed, but I have some sense of it. So I apologize if I'm coming from a place where I lack knowledge or don't have the full story. But my impression has been that there have been really harmful comments. And I also just want to mention, I was in this meeting earlier and then I had to leave right after the discussion on the general plan. And then I came back just in the middle of the discussion where Bruce was speaking. And so I missed a chunk of tonight as well, because I had to leave for this other meeting. So again, I'm coming with only pieces of a puzzle, but I want to share that. I echo a lot of what Naomi said, and I feel really strongly and very deeply concerned and devastated at comments that would harm this committee, at comments where clearly there's a lot of education that needs to be done and a lack of awareness in this town, and a core that seems like a core of a lack of consciousness that is driving a lot of comments that are harmful and hurtful to all of you. So anyway, I just want to say I'm so sorry for that. I feel that, and I want to help and support in any way I can. And I thank you again for being such strong, stalwart members of this committee. And I hope that this work doesn't fizzle or dissolve. And I want to do whatever I can to help you, to help support this work going forward. And I truly hope that those who have made hurtful comments can do some more reflection and grow. And there's a way to do outreach of some kind and find a way to bring more awareness so that our town can grow a little further on this going forward. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jess.
Okay, thanks. Next person in line is Mark. Mark, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I would suggest in your new committee, you don't start out by telling 90% of the population of a town that they're racist. I think that might be a really good start. If you really want to communicate with people, you should try to communicate with them, not be divisive, which is what this committee has been from the beginning. As I said last night, you had a lot of money. You could have done a lot of good. I pointed out a few things. I've talked to other people who said they've made recommendations. None of that has happened. So what you're looking at, you want to take it as you're being crushed, you're being, people with their incredible white fragility that just can't deal with whatever. No. This committee's focus has been in the wrong place. When you start off with that assumption that 90% of a town is racist, then you go and you say, well, anyone who's European origin is responsible for Spanish crimes against the Native Americans in this area, let alone Mexico, let alone Latin America, let alone the Philippines, etc. What kind of reaction do you think you're going to get from people? How many chapters of white supremacist organizations are in Fairfax? Ku Klux Klan? Don't think so. Neo-Nazis? Don't think so. Who else? Is there like a Minuteman thing or whatever? They don't exist. So what you're looking at are people who are primarily centrist, left of center, who've tried to do the right things in a social context as they know it, and basically they've lost on a national level. Thank you. They've lost on a national level because of a federal government and the way it trickles down to screw all these people over. So maybe you ought to think about what's happening with policy, and maybe you ought to think about how you're going to approach people, because this committee had an opportunity to do something real, and it didn't. All it did was alienate the town of Fairfax. And as far as Mayor Ackerman goes, you don't like my comments? Well, you weren't paying attention when 2 incidents happened the same evening and you said nothing. You had a chance to review it. You still said nothing. Supposedly you had a private conversation. Someone else had a private conversation. There could have been an apology. That might have gone a long way from the person who we're talking about, but that didn't happen. So good luck in your new venture. And hopefully you'll be more inclusive and look for people who know how to work the system
Thank
because it's
you.
needed.
Okay, the next person in line is Deborah. Deborah, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, committee, for hearing me. Thank you for your well-intended efforts. Social equity, racial justice involves a dialogue. And I have, as you know, attended many of your meetings, unfortunately via Zoom. And I have been unable to participate in a dialogue. Any comments that I have made in difference to the seemingly one mind effort of this committee have been regarded as racist and harmful, and I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the conversation tonight where these comments from the public have been alluded to as being harmful. And yet, although efforts have been made to, request specific instances, that we've never been given that. So it seems that if a dialogue truly is to take place and people from the public come forward and need to be educated, if they're indeed making comments that exhibit their racist identity or their ignorance, then the first step to education is to have a dialogue and to say, here's what you said, that's why we take it as being harmful and racist, and here's what we want to do to fix that. But that's never been done. There's been a barricade between you guys and the public. And I think that's why this committee has failed. And I think that the people who have come forward to speak are sensitive, intelligent, willing people. And if there is something wrong in our community, we want to fix it because we are a tolerant community. But I really feel that the committee has been intolerant. And I'm sorry you're all sad. I can see you're all sad. But that's where I find that's where I find the error of the tangent that you've chosen to launch yourselves on. So again, thank you for all your time and your effort and your goodwill. And I'm sorry you're sad.
Okay, thank you. Next person in line is Jody. Jody, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Well, I was incredibly excited months ago at the start of this initiative by our town. I was very proud and very excited and very hopeful. It has not panned out, I think, the way that many of us in town had hoped for. And I think many of us don't or can't or haven't spoken up in support in the way that we feel it. But I have thoroughly supported the work of this group, and I'm very appreciative for everything everyone has done. And this is clearly not the right venue at this time for the very brave and very courageous and very thoughtful folks who have been involved. So I just wish you all very well. Government has never been really my main expression for the change I've wanted to see in the world. It is one venue. It's a tough one to work with. There's much about the way we set up democracy in this country that does not serve us well. But there are many other venues and avenues, and I know and am very excited for the work that not only you all are going to continue to do here and in your personal lives and in your social lives, but all the rest of us, many of us are going to do. I mean, I just have to say, as a white person, we white folks have a lot we need to work on. And I wish us well too. We have work to do. And to the degree we can do it together, more power to us. And if not, we need to go our separate ways at times and do the work that we need to do to keep ourselves safe and brave and resilient. So again, thank you all. And I'm in your corner. All right, good night.
Thanks, Jody. Okay, I see one more hand. Go ahead, Jane. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just want to say I am terribly sorry that the comments that I and others who think like I do have been harmful to you. We've repeatedly asked for you to explain to us what exactly was it that we said that caused you pain or harm. We never received an answer. To this day, I really don't understand how come just because we disagree with you, that's considered harmful or threatening. We've never been able to have a real dialogue back and forth. It's just, bam, we have our thing, you have your thing, that's it. I suggest at some point, it's probably way too idealistic, that there be a roundtable with half members from your side of the forum, if you will, and half from our side of the forum, mediated by somebody, I would say, some really neutral person. I have people in mind, but I don't think this should all just die like with two sides, with a line drawn in the middle. Oh, here are these people, they're the good people. Here are these people, they're the bad people. Each side thinking the other is the bad and the good. It's ridiculous. It's not, this is not intelligent. This is not the way human beings should deal with things. This is not the way this was set up in the beginning. This should have been something that the entire community could have rallied around and said, yes, Fairfax is a very welcoming, loving, warm community. We don't need to say, oh no, we're racist, bad people. And that gets people's back up. They don't want to, I don't want to, okay, I have 1 minute. It's probably not enough to even begin. I'm so sorry any of you have been hurt. And if I said things that hurt you, I'm sorry. I have strong feelings. I express them, and I take umbrage when we are vilified and, sort of called out as the other, the enemy other, just because we don't agree with the White Fragility Manifesto. Thank you very much. I appreciate your contribution, truly. Good night.
Okay, thank you. There are no more hands raised.
Sorry. So we'll close public comment. And so we, in closing, we could have a report from a process observer, if you would like. And closing comments, we had agreed earlier that we can speak to, in general, to what we've heard from the public if we would like. But first, if the process observer, Lisa, would you, if you have anything to say, can you hear that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So bravery and risk taking, I think we did very well tonight, and we were very open. And I think we honored personal accounts and tried to show respect and active listening. Ask questions and don't assume. I think we had some of that, despite the fact I think we're all quite passionate and concerned right now. In terms of sharing airtime, I do think that Veronica and I spoke probably more than we should have as the white members on the committee. So, we've tried to tamp that back a little bit. Not up for debate. Sometimes I think that's it. People's personal experiences are not up for debate. And I think that was okay for us as committee members. I do have some more to say about that though, in terms of comment. Respectful response to triggers. Yes, I think that we did well with that. Don't yuck my yum. I think we were okay with each other. We were reflective and thank you for, especially Veronica, for pointing out that we were both talking more than maybe we should have. So checking on yourself. Welcome somatic reflection. I'm not sure how people were doing that, but I hope so. Own your privilege. I do think that did come up a few times. And bring community along and foster inclusion. I think that we're all trying to get to that dialogue that can help us learn and teach without harming. And I think that's the hard one. And that's it.
Thank you. So any closing comments? That's it. Veronica.
Just want to say goodbye officially to you, Tayo and Serena. But not really, but in this official way. And to also name some, it's like there was a few members of the public who have felt like they had wanted to get more feedback, and I will happily connect with anybody personally to give more feedback around what felt harmful from the perspectives that I've gotten to hear from the members of color on our committee. I don't think it's their job to talk you through that, but we'll give my permission to Bruce and Chance or Town Council as if there's any emails that come your way where people are willing to sit down and talk. I'm happy to do that work with you, and we'll look forward to growing myself through that work as well, not just you working.
I'm going to second what Veronica said because I don't think it should be. I mean, one thing that I've really thought about is, we have had listening sessions in town before this where people did talk about their experiences and why they're saying some of the things they're saying. And so I think that, it's not up to a group of committee members to lay bare their souls to a somewhat hostile audience and talk about the most painful things that have happened to them, perhaps in Fairfax. That's a really hard ask. And I do want to say that, so that I am, as not a woman of color, but as a gay person in this town, one of the things that hurt me from public comment was saying I have experienced homophobia, and having a member of the public tell me that there is no homophobia in Fairfax. That doesn't happen here. That is the sort of comment that I think has hurt a number of the BIPOC people on this committee in terms of race and ethnicity, is being told what you experienced didn't happen. That doesn't happen here. It doesn't exist. You're making it up. That's painful. And so I just want people to think about that we don't all experience what everyone else is experiencing, that there's a lot of different experiences and perspectives in town, and we can't, as a single person, experience everything and know everything that happens to everybody in town. So I want people to be compassionate and humble in that respect. But I am, grateful to hear some comments, some of which are critical, that come from a more compassionate place. And I'd be happy to talk to people a little bit more. Some of you I see around the neighborhood, and it would be nice to just have a nice chat.
And I'll echo, as Lisa said, as I understood her to say, that I appreciate the tone of some of the comments at the close of the meeting tonight from the public. And I do agree, as Jane said in closing, that it would be good to have some kind of envisioning it as a round table. It would be good to be off of Zoom. It would be good to be outside of the stilted atmosphere of the Brown Act and the time limitations, because it was really a horrible environment in which to try to have an already very difficult discussion and to meet each other. So it's just very strange how that happened. The murder of George Floyd and then the Black Lives Matter resurgence happened during COVID, and that was probably no accident. That was also, I think, because people were paying more attention because they weren't so distracted like we usually are. But now, because of COVID, we're all on Zoom. It's just strange the way things happen. And I think that's part of what has made this difficult, is the feeling, the fear of what might be going on this committee when those fears weren't actually well-founded. I mean, this committee was not, I don't think was nearly as scary as it may have seemed like. So I hope that we can go forward and have dialogue. That's my closing comment. And I apologize again for my failings and on the council and in this committee to be able to shepherd this process through better. Hurts that it has been so painful. But I know it'll continue. And I thank you all for that. I'm so glad to have gotten to know you. Hope we can continue much. We're ready to adjourn. We'll meet again. Meeting adjourned.